So now we had 2 branch offices, and I want to point out one thing is that when you're just a little firm like that and you only got a few people working for you, the regulators don't, you're not going to do anything, any problem. But now we were getting a little further up the grade, and who wrote somebody had to write all the manuals, and I wrote them all. Had no idea of what I was doing.
We copied those when we started.
In fact, people would often ask me, well, what do you attribute the success to? And I said, well, you really need about 3 things if you're going to start a brokerage company. And you need money, and you need experience, and you need talent, and you need all these things. And I said, we didn't have any of those. So there's one last thing that I didn't mention, and that's luck. And I think we did have some luck. And as we went along, we found people who came with us and were willing to go to work for the company at really low salaries and without any big benefits. And there's some around the table right here that helped us get a start. At that time, there were several. Talk about some of the problem areas that we faced that you don't face today. One of them was, of course, the independent contractor basis. And everybody in those days that worked for a securities company was an employee, and standard things. And if you had a branch office, you were responsible for renting that office and paying the expenses. And since the costs for maintaining that were heavy, the commissions you gave up were always less than 50%, and most of the time starting out at 35 or something in that area, or even less. So we didn't have the money to do all this, so we said, to hell with it, we'll make it independent. And immediately that attracted the attention of our regulators, because this isn't how you do this business. And on top of that, what were we selling? Limited partnerships. And the regulators, I swear, didn't know anything about a limited partnership. So, and the IRS was looking over our shoulders. I think that. And there was a company up in Orange County that was just into limited partnerships, and they had practically gave you 100% commission, and they had a lot of people working for them. And they paid the manager of their branch offices the commissions, and then he in turn paid the people who worked for him whatever he decided and had a contract. Well, it turns out that that when the IRS came in, they said, hey, you had an employee where's your branch managers? Did you do all the things the rules say you're supposed to do? And no, they didn't. They were out of business in a matter of a couple of weeks. So we had to avoid that. We spent a lot of our time looking at, for example, one of the things that in order to be an employee, the employer has to provide you the tools to work with. So we were very careful to charge people for forms and establish that as one of the things. And some of these things that we did like that basically saved us when we did have an IRS was after us. At that time, that we were still concerned that we wouldn't that ultimately they would pierce the veil and that we'd get charged with not having deducted things and so on. But about that time, the independent contractor thing got around, and there was up in Puget Sound, most of the timber they have up there is felled along the rivers, and then it's floated down, and they have tugs that get these things and take them to the mill. And some of the places where they would put this on trucks, bring them down to the water, dump them in, and the truckers couldn't afford the big trucks they needed, so the mill company would pay them, basically lend them enough money so they could buy the trucks and then pay them to take care of it. And the tugboats were also had a similar arrangement with the mills, and they were independent contractors, the ones that run these little tugs. And the IRS was after them. Well, they had political power in the state of Washington, and one of the senators up there proposed a bill that the independent contractor thing would not be pursued for a year, and that in the meantime Congress would come up with some new laws that would take care of that. So the heat was off for a year, and it never came back. So we managed to take care of that situation. We did have clients that there were some clients that wanted to buy or sell. Many of them wanted to sell their stocks. So about that time, the SEC changed their rules a little bit and basically permitted a correspondent broker. And there was a guy who worked out of L.A. that discovered this, and he came down to see me and suggested that we would change our contracts and that we go to broker-dealer somewhere to be our correspondent, because we couldn't afford to buy a seat on the exchange and so on. So we did that, and it was Wedbush. Ed Wedbush had a company. He's still in business in L.A., and you probably all have dealt with him. So Wedbush agreed to take our situation, and we didn't have anybody in our office that knew anything about trading stock. So I still remember we had this first gal that we hired. So I said, "You're in charge of trading."
Low man on the totem pole.
And about that time, we were dealing with Wedbush, and one of the Wedbush employees was Stan Brooks. So we met with Stan and convinced him that he ought to go to work for us. So he did. And Stan knew the business really well. I don't know, many of you know Stan probably. And so pretty soon we had a legitimate trading program going with Wedbush.